Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Sim. I'm a philosopher at the National University of Singapore, and I helped Captain Ho to write his memoirs. And one question people often ask me is, how am I related to Captain Ho? Yeah, so many people say, are you his grandson? Yeah, how? What do you think? Got resemblance? Well, I won't answer this question yet, just to keep you in suspense. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I know you're all here to listen to Captain Ho's story, so I'm not. I'll talk a bit more later about the experience of writing the book with him and what I've learned from it. But for now, let's hear it from the man himself, Captain Ho. All right. So, okay, his hearing aid battery came out, so I need to speak very loudly into his ear. Okay. Yeah. So, Captain Ho, why did you start writing this book?
Well, it went back to about a couple of years ago when I was in Hong Kong. I met up with Robert Kwok and George Yeo over dinner. And over a couple of drinks, I think I was a little bit high, and I related my life story to them. It's all been recorded on this book, what I said. So they were quite astonished that I went through life like that, and they said, you must record what you just told us, because if you don't, it'll be all wasted. Nobody know what you have gone through. I said, that's not very much, but they said, no, you think so, but it's very worthwhile. So when they came back, I gave it a thought. I said, maybe it's true, because after all these 70 years, I've gone through quite a bit in my life. And there is a lot of things that I would like to share with all of you here. And today, give me my great pleasure to tell you what happened to me 70 years ago.
Okay, so Captain Ho, I'm going to set the stage for them, okay? I'm going to summarize a bit of your life first before we get to the war, okay? So, Captain Ho came from a sleepy town in Ipoh, Malaysia, and then he worked his way to eventually study in Hong Kong University, all right? And he was actually having the time of his life as a student in Hong Kong University. And then one fine day in December, the Japanese arrived. So, Captain Ho, can you tell us what happened on the day the Japanese invaded Hong Kong?
Well, it was all happened very early in the morning, on the 7th of December 1941. I was doing my exams in the Hong Kong University, and suddenly I heard the noise of boom, boom, boom. So I was very curious, and I rushed to the balcony to find out what's all the commotion. And to my surprise, I saw the bombers dropping bombs in Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong. So I couldn't believe what I saw. I said, this cannot be true. How come things like that had happened in Hong Kong? So I rushed back to my room. The moment I entered the room, the rediffusion announced the war just started and announced about the attack of Pearl Harbor and all the bombing in Hong Kong and Singapore. So I, of course, as a young student, and I was very lost. I said, this thing cannot happen just like that, but it did happen. Yeah. So I saw the beginning of World War II.
Yeah. Okay, so Captain Ho, let's just fast forward. Eventually the British surrendered in Hong Kong, right? Then the Japanese came in. Then how did life for you change?
You see, of course, I was all along very fearful, because I know about the Japanese atrocities committed during the war in China, during the 1931, when we invaded Manchuria, And then Marco Polo 1937. And later on, of course, there was they won the war in Nanking and also in Hankow. But the last one was Hankow. And then when the Kuomintang's Air Force was completely wiped out by the Zeros. And
But Captain Ho, what did the Japanese do to the people in Hong Kong?
so because of all that, I was wondering about them in Hong Kong because I'm going to face them. So the Japanese, of course, they keep on harassing Hong Kong, and Hong Kong surrendered on Christmas Day, and slowly they move up from the new territories, and eventually they went to Hong Kong, and there where I was. So I was very apprehensive because of their past, all the stories about them, and here I'm going to face them.
So in the memoirs, he records, he tells the story of how the Japanese, sometimes you forget to bow to them, then the soldiers will just stab random people on the streets with the bayonets, and he had to witness this happening to people, So anyway, let's fast forward. Okay, Captain Ho, we're going to fast forward now. Let's talk about how you escaped from Hong Kong. What do you do to that night to run away from Hong Kong into China?
So when I stayed in Hong Kong. At that time, I couldn't go anywhere because I was not prepared to go anywhere because I have no means myself. So I have to consolidate a little bit in Hong Kong. But during this time, I have to meet up with them. So what I saw in Hong Kong was not pleasant at all. There was no security. I could be punished any time. So life was very miserable, and I saw a lot of atrocities, and I was very fearful that one day I'll be also being punished that way. So I make plans to get away. So with a group of students from Hong Kong University, we had the same idea, and at the same time, of course, we have guides who will help us to escape from Hong Kong. They came from Guangzhou, the Free China, and told us about the plans they have for us if we want to go. Then I was one of those, about 25 of us, the students, prepared to take our chances to go to Free China.
And you had to disguise yourselves, right?
I beg your pardon?
You had to disguise yourself as well, right? When you were escaping.
I have to?
Disguise, put on a disguise. Yes, because you couldn't show the Japanese that you're students. That you have to put on a...
Of course, the Japanese are not happy with students like us who want to leave Hong Kong. So we have to go very quietly, very secretly. And during this is one of the very dangerous voyages because we have to get to the border of the South Hong Kong, to the border on the northern side. So we went through quite very dangerous the Japanese guards.
Yeah. They had to actually disguise themselves as farmers, and then because they are students, they were told that they can continue their education in China, so they packed a lot of their books and they had to hide their books as well. Yeah. Now, Captain Ho, the Japanese found out that your group was trying to escape, right? And they learned that there were women in the group, correct?
I didn't hear that part.
The Japanese learned that there were women in your group, and they wanted to pursue your group while you're escaping. Yes?
Say again.
The Japanese, they found out that there were women in your group.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course, when we were in South of God, to cross over to no man's land, the Japanese discovered that we have some lady students among us. So we have to hide them. If we hid them in a hotel far away, and then we ourselves pretend that they are in the boat. So I was one of the decoys. I'm in the boat. They came to see me with their pointers. And then I said, where are they? I said, we are here. There's nobody here except us. So they were quite angry with the pointers, really pointing at us. Anytime they get overcome, then they could have hurt us.
Were you feeling very afraid when they were pointing the bayonets at you?
So right away we changed our plans. We left us right away. We got some boats and spread away to no man's land.
Okay, Captain Ho, in the interest of time, let's talk about your time as a student refugee in Sun Yat-sen University.
Well, eventually we landed in Kok Kong. This Kok Kong place is the center of student refugees from Hong Kong, from different parts of Southeast Asia. Anyway, so I was allotted a place in Sun Yat-sen University in Ping Shek. Ping Shek is slightly north of Guangzhou.
Was it easy to study during the war?
Well, it was very tough there because Sun Yat-sen University, it was also keep moving. Keep on moving, so towards the end, the university is there, but the faculties were very poorly equipped. Lectures were very sparse, not very continuously. So anyway, I had very little means. I survived on tangerines and soybeans every day. The only meal I had was in the evening. I have a bowl of rice and eggs and salt fish, and that's all I had. And that went on for a long while. At the same time, I also have no future at all, waiting for something that I could do, nothing that I could do. And the Japanese were very nearby. They could come and all run this kind of Ping Shek. And I'll be finished. Anyway, I was very patient. I have to learn from my father, who told me that we have to be very patient and the resistance from the hardships.
Yeah, he told you about ngai, correct?
Yeah, the ngai. The Chinese word ngai means to endure, to survive. And that word brought me through.
Now, can you tell us about the day you saw the advertisement in the newspaper to join the China Air Force?
Yes, of course. Then out of frustration, I somehow saw an advert in the paper. advertising for pilots to be trained by the Kuomintang. They were desperate because by this time the Air Force was completely wiped out. And at the same time, I think America and China have a treaty called the Lend-Lease, where the Americans are going to train the pilots to fight the Japanese. So that's how they advertise. So I took a chance, and all of my friends discouraged me because I don't have the stature, the height, the weight to fit in to be a pilot. And first of all, I never in whole my life ever thought of being a pilot. So in desperation, I said, okay, there is nothing to lose by applying. So I applied, and they invited me to do the exams in Guilin. So,
Okay, Captain Ho. Now, in the interest of time, okay, let me just summarize this part for you, for the audience. Okay, I summarize for them. Okay, so Captain Ho, he passed the test, and then he went on. They were supposed to do some training in China, but because of the problems of the war, they had to move the first phase of the training in Lahore, which is Pakistan. Yeah. So, Captain Ho, can you tell us about the first time you flew a plane in Lahore?
okay. So when I was accepted by them, because I passed both physical and written exam, so they sent me to Kunming, where to start to do our pre-flight training, and also to ensure that we are fit enough to carry on. Eventually they sent us to Lahore, Punjab, and we had to fly over the Himalayas, over to Assam, and from Assam we took a train all the way to Punjab, Lahore, where they set up a training school for us. Now, this Lahore training school the idea is to make sure that we have the future for us to go to America to fly.
How was the experience being in the plane for the first time?
You see, I have never flown before. None of us have done. We were cadets. During those days in Lahore, it was very tense because we have to solo within 8 hours. Otherwise, we washed out and we go back to be a student refugee again. So I have to concentrate in getting through. So I managed to get through the training in Lahore, and the Americans sent a few officers to check us. And at that time, we had 180 cadet pilots. Only 120 were suitable to go to America for the so-called 1 miracle year of training. So I managed to be one of those 120.
Yeah, so there was quite a high dropout rate, huh? Yeah. So, Captain Ho, how was the training in America like? Were you able to cope with it?
Yes, okay. We finally took a long voyage from Bombay to New York, over the Atlantic. Of course, we have to breeze through the lots of U-boats, and we finally arrived in New York, and the train was waiting for us to bring us to Arizona, to Phoenix, actually to Glendale, and we started training. What the famous place there was the Thunderbird Field. That's where I started my start training again. We have to repeat the same thing that we had in Lahore. And I went through 4 phases of training in America: the pre-flight, the primary, basic, advanced, and OTU. And the OTU means that after graduation, we were trained to fly bombers or fighters for combat. So anyway, we went through all these phases and returned to China to fight the war.
So why did you choose to be a bomber pilot?
Well, there was few reasons to be. Well, to be pilot, bomber pilot, you are not so much exposed to the dangers like fighter. A fighter, you go up there, the chances of survival is not very good. I wouldn't say the bombers are any better, but at least we have another engine to help us just in case. So, and I think that I also thought about the future. If I ever go through the war, I can go into commercial flying. And this is exactly what happened.
Okay. Yeah, I realized I forgot to say also, in those days, there was no such thing as flight simulator. So in the training, when he flies a plane for the first time, it's really for the first time, so it's really a matter of life or death. And now, after you receive your wings, right, you had a fiancé, right? Yeah? So
Say again?
You had a fiancé.
Yes.
Yeah. I will tell them the story just to in the interest of time, okay? So he had a fiancée. Her name is Marilyn, an American girl, fresh out of college. So she see him with his wings and his uniform, very good looking, very handsome. Yeah. You can see the photos inside. Yeah. So she was head over heels for him. And then when it's time for him to return to China, it was very difficult for them to part. Yeah, and so actually Marilyn kind of begged him to stay, but because he's signed on to the Air Force, he can't do that, right? So and then he proposed to her. Yeah, but then before he had to go back to China. Okay, they don't tell you the date when you're going back to China, but he did promise Marilyn that he'll call her every day while he's still in America. Yeah, now. Captain Ho, I just told them the story of Marilyn. Can you tell them what happened when you called for Marilyn 3 days after you left her?
Excuse me, Jonathan. I want to make sure my talking, are they clear?
Yeah. Okay, clear? Yes. You see,
right.
It's very clear.
That's important.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway. This is my romance story. Yeah, of course, I was they call it OTU. I was in Colorado. The airfield was called La Junta. Yeah. La Junta Airfield, south of Denver. Yeah. And I was trained to be a bomber pilot on the B-25.
Captain Ho, I already told them that we fast forward after you're preparing to leave for China already. So you proposed to her and then you called her 3 days later.
Now after my graduation from Douglas, Arizona, I came to this La Junta airfield. Of course, by this time I was an officer. And we were 60 of us who came to La Junta. There, during one of the social meeting, I met a Marilyn. She was very fascinated by the Chinese pilot. She'd never seen a Chinaman before, particularly me, Us, we were in uniform. Of course, we looked very smart. And then, so she became very attached to me. And then I was, of course, at the same time, I myself, was already there for a year, flying very hard, and I was also been attracted by her. So when the time comes that I have to say goodbye because I have to come back to fight the war, she said I cannot go. I said it's not possible that I can stay, you know. So anyway, it was a very tough time for me to convince her that it's not possible. In the end, I compromised. I said, okay, we cannot talk about marriage. Marriage is out of question because I myself, not from China, I was from Malaysia. I happened to be in China. And then if the war is over, I have to go back to fight the war. I might not survive. Even to survive, if I get hurt, there's no future for you. And even the war is over and everything is over, I have no home. I don't belong to China. And you are from America. So it's a very difficult situation. I told her to forget me. He said, cannot forget. So it was very difficult. In the end, I said, okay, is it possible that we put it aside for a while? Meanwhile, if you don't mind, we get engaged and see how things go. She accepted that proposition. Then we say goodbye. We say goodbye, and then I went to Santa Ana to wait for the boat to bring me back to China. Every evening I have to phone her to tell her I was well. And but one evening, after 3 nights, I phoned up and she was not there. And then another person was there and told me he's left us. I said, what do you mean by left? So eventually she explained. She passed away. I said, I couldn't believe it. Only 3 days ago. He said, yes. So I waited and I phoned her again. Hopefully I can talk to the mother. But the mother didn't come. And eventually they told me she passed away because of acute asthma. And the funeral services and so on. I tried to go back there, but my commanding officer said, no way, we could sail off any time to back to China. You cannot stay behind. So that's how it is. So my whole journey, my whole voyage from Long Beach to Calcutta was so miserable because I kept thinking about this situation. Was really a nightmare for me. Anyway, I also half believed that she was really dead. I thought maybe the mother objected our proposition. But anyway, I left it alone. And after a few years, when I make another trip back to Colorado, I went to his graveyard and I saw her epitaph. And there I accept. I was so glad that this thing really happened. And all this thing is in my book.
Okay, Captain Ho, now let's fast forward. You're back in China, okay, fighting the war, all right? What was the most memorable battle that you remember?
Of course, most memorable are my missions. Among the missions I had was the strafing of the cavalry, because with information they were there in certain part of central China. We were in Hanzhong at that time. I was with the CACW, the Chinese American Composite Wing, the first bomb squadron of the Flying Tigers. Anyway, but that's my mission. And that is, I had, when they were down there. So,
Okay, for the benefit.
Yes.
Yeah. So for the benefit of those wondering what strafing is when the bomber plane flies very low, and then the people on the plane, they will use a machine gun to attack the people on the ground. Yeah. So, Captain Ho, what feelings went through you when what feelings did you feel when you were finally attacking the enemy?
I was very, unfortunately, it's very cruel. I really struck them, and I saw them leaping away, dispersing, but I gave them no chance. I went through 2 or 3 times and killed them. It's very cruel, but to my mind, I said, well, this is for all the atrocities they have done to China for all these years, and here I am. Here I am to be able to do something for China.
And, the whole time, were you afraid of dying?
Well, of course, there was also fear that I might get hurt or even get killed. But that doesn't matter to me. I was prepared for all that, to sacrifice for a cause.
And some of your comrades died in battle, correct?
I beg your pardon?
Some of your comrades, they died during the battle.
Of course,
Yes.
they were.
How do you cope with the loss of your comrades?
Of course, there's a lot of very sad situation because you have to report back to the parents if they are nearby, and then to announce them and to bring back the remains to the parents. All these are part and parcel of war. So we have to accept it that way.
So and soon after the war was over, right? How do you receive news of that the war was over?
Well, this news come very gradual because we saw the war was closing on to Japan, like the Battle of Iwo Jima and so on. So they were closing back to Japan, the mainland. So we also had a mission to bomb Shanghai just about a week before the end of the war. The whole of our squadron came and to fly from our mainland to Shanghai. But that shows that there's a possibility of war is over. So eventually, we heard about the first bomb, and but the Japanese didn't surrender yet. Then after a few days, the second bomb, they surrendered.
So how do you feel when you heard the news of surrender?
Well, of course, we were very happy. I cried with joy. But at the same time, I have to think about the future. The war is over. And I have no home. I didn't belong to China. I only went there as a volunteer to fight. So anyway, I made a lot of American friends and Chinese friends during my stay in Hanzhong. And I have to make preparation at the time the war just suddenly ended. It's very difficult to make any decision. You have to wait until things are settled down. You know what's going to happen to us, because I was still in the Air Force.
Okay, now we have 3 minutes left before the Q&A. Okay, so let me just summarize a couple of points. So even though World War II was over, there was a civil war that was actually breaking out in China. Yeah, so the communists, with the Kuomintang. So eventually he left the China Air Force because he was asked to bomb what he considered his fellow people. Yeah, and then fast forward, he fled. He left China. He left Hong Kong to Singapore because the communists had already taken over. And so he came to Singapore in the 1950s to join what was then Malayan Airways. Yeah, and he's the first of 4 pioneer local pilots for Malayan Airways. And well, you can read the rest of the story in the book, but basically because back then there was quite a lot of racism. They looked down on the Asian local pilots. So he fought very, very hard for the local pilots, that to have more local pilots, for more rights for the local pilots. And in fact, I think what's very spectacular is that he actually enlisted the help of Lee Kuan Yew. Yeah, Lee Kuan Yew, our former prime minister, back then still a very young lawyer. So Lee Kuan Yew helped, together with Captain Ho, they formed the first pilots association, the first pilots union. Yeah. So anyway, let me because we're running out of time. So let me just share a bit about my experience and involvement in the creation of the book, because some of you are wondering, how am I related to him? Yeah, I'm actually 1/3 his age right now, 101. I'm 34. So many people think that, oh, is it grandfather, grandson? Actually, no. Just as Captain Ho's life is full of happy coincidences, and it so happens that me being part of this book was also a happy coincidence. One day, the publisher just called me and said, hey, we like how you edited this book. Do you want to be involved in this? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. But so there's not much of a story there. But what I want to share is working on this book with Captain Ho has been very, very eye-opening. More than just the war, there's so many lessons, even for myself. Personally, when I was writing this book, I was actually on my way to becoming a lecturer. So, and it actually struck me because Captain Ho, he trained the first 300 pilots for Singapore Airlines, right? And of course, they're all retired. But what's so amazing is that these pilots, his former students, right? They still keep in touch with him after so many years. He retired in 1980, yeah? So they still keep in touch with him. Their families still keep in touch with him. They introduce their students and their students to Captain Ho. And as somebody who was, and as for myself, I was becoming a lecturer, I was like thinking to myself, wow, for somebody to train people to such an extent that they still keep in touch after, how many, 4 decades, 5 decades, yeah? And still introducing to their family and their friends, right? I thought to myself, there must be something going on here that's very special. And so what you'll discover in the book is how Captain Ho, really, the war has really shaped him. Sometimes when we undergo struggle, suffering, right? There are 2 choices we can pick. One is we get completely absorbed in our pain. And the other is to really rise up of the pain in the service of others. And really, this book is a record of how Captain Ho has become so, he chose the path to support and help others. And in that moment in all those years of struggle and suffering, he's become so human, so humane. And one of the things that, because I got to interview many of the people that he worked with, that he trained, and one of the interesting things is that they say that, like, what is it about Captain Ho that make you still want to stay in touch with him after so many years? And the key is, he cares for us. Very, very simple, ordinary things. He cares for us, he understands us, he makes us feel very assured. Remember, those days there was no flight simulator, right? So he'll be in the cockpit with them. He says, okay. He makes them feel very calm, very assured. And because he wanted more local pilots, he really was very, very patient despite their struggles. And it's these little things. And he will challenge them. No matter how successful they are, he will challenge them to go even further. And these were the little things that really taught me, like, wow, this is what you need to be a good educator. And so personally for me, I've been following his footsteps with that. Yeah, like I try to do what I do, emulate Captain Ho as a lecturer. Okay, and now that is all that I want to share. So now we move on to the questions and answers. Okay, one of the highest rated question that has come in is, okay, so Captain Ho, there are people asking, do you have any resentment towards the Japanese now that the war is over?
Well, I'm afraid to say I still have. Well, anyway, because all these years from 1931 until 1942, they have been harassing China and bringing so much misery to China. I still sometimes wonder about them because they are such clever people. They are very clever. They were, even now, it's a great nation, but during the war, their philosophy was completely different from us. They want to make life difficult for China and the world. And yet, up to now, I have to yet to hear they say sorry. There was never came. And that's why I cannot understand.
Okay, so another question is how did we collaborate to write a book? So so what happens was Captain Ho and his son Fred, they've been recording a lot of the events that has happened. So where I came in was the records, the original manuscript was very factual. This happened, this happened, this happened, and I thought, okay, maybe we can put in more detail. So it was a period of 9 months of I stay in the West Lakeside, so I traveled all the way to Pasir Ris for 9 months, interviewing him, understanding the feelings, the experiences he had, the regrets. And one thing that's really amazing is Fred actually kept a very, very good archive of all of the documents that were part of Captain Ho's life, from his birth certificate back in 1920, the correspondences, even the love letters that he wrote for his wife. It's all very neatly preserved. So I was able to trawl through all this and do a bit of additional research. And I think what is most amazing is after talking to him for 9 months, I kind of like picked up on his voice, in a sense, in the writing style. So I actually, what was very affirming for me was after I wrote the book, and later on, Fred actually showed me another letter, which I didn't see before. And I was very surprised that the writing style in that letter actually matched the book. So that is the product of 9 months of continuously interacting with one another. Yeah. Now, so there is a question. Having lived through so many world events, what are your thoughts about the world today? Do you have any advice for this generation? Yeah. Do you have any advice for this generation?
Well, I must say I have, but it's so complex. The world has become so complex, and now and on top of that, we are now having this virus, which makes life very difficult for the whole world. Sometimes I wonder how come we have this sort of virus, suddenly there's effect not only just Singapore but the whole world, making life very miserable, and there's no end to it. I can't say that I have any advice to anybody. Is that I myself, count myself very fortunate to have gone through so many crossroads, so many milestones to be where I am today. So I count myself, as far as I'm concerned, I'm very, very fortunate that I reached my age and I still survive to tell the stories. And most important, I've written a book about myself and my philosophy of life. Of course, I can't say that my way of life is correct, but I think I make a lot of people happy. I help a lot of people. And this is a great satisfaction for me that I'm ready to go any time now, of course. I've reached the age not so many people. I think a lot of people envy me in the sense that I'm still healthy at this stage of my life. And be able to tell you, like today, to share my life to you. Well, for better and for worse, there are certain things that we cannot apprehend why this, why that. Like you just asked me about the Japanese and then now the virus. So we, as human beings, we have to make the most of it. Like today, Texas is suffering. Sometimes you wonder why. How come America is so rich, so resourceful, and yet coming back to this sort of thing, like the lack of water, light of this thing can happen to America, to a state which is so rich. It's rich in oil and all that. And yet this thing can happen in Texas. Anyway, we are not here to try to answer all that.
Okay, so Captain Ho, to ask you a related question, I'm sure many people are also wondering the same. What is your secret to long life? Yeah.
Well, most important is to have peace of mind. We try to very hard to help people. I have helped a lot of people, but strange enough, after all these things, it's a payback. People pay me back in other form. I am not expecting anything, but they are very consoled that people remember all that. Particularly my students in SIA, whom I train. They take turns to take care of me now. They make me very happy because we still go back to a lot of good memories. And in other words, I have no enemies, but good friends. And that's important. I call it peace of mind. But it's not that simple, but I happen to enjoy that philosophy.
Okay, so Captain Ho, there's a lot of people are very interested in your war stories. So one question is, what is the most terrifying mission that you went on?
Well, I just mentioned just now about the strafing of the cavalry. Mm-hmm. And that is a very important mission because it means a lot to me. It means a lot to the squadron.
Do you have other missions that you want to talk about?
Well, of course, they all come different there. We have a high level. Our targets are all different. Like the Yellow River, like the Sijiazhuang and many other missions. They all come different ways, different dangers. And every time you come back safe, you say, thank God, I'm back here. Because we are subjected to many hazards. The flying itself, the weather, the bombing, the ground fire. So there's nothing is easy.
Okay, Captain Ho. So as you can see, he's wearing quite a few badges and insignia on his jacket, right? So one question is, can you tell us more about the badges and insignia on your blazer?
Well, this is for CBI, China, Burma, India. This one here. This wing is from the Kuomintang wing. Kuomintang, then Chiang Kai-shek. Where I first joined, it was Chiang Kai-shek. Now, of course, it's no more. They lost the war. They lost the war and went to Taiwan. This is a very sad story that Chiang Kai-shek was so successful during the early part of the war. But as time went on, these warlords all become corrupted, and they lost track with the people. Mao Zedong is on the other side. On the other hand, they were from the long march all the way to Yan'an. They were grouped up in Yan'an, the caves, in a remote area in Yan'an, and yet they came out very victoriously because they were with the people. They were with the farmers, and out of the blue they became very strong and defeated the Kuomintang. I myself couldn't believe it. I was flying that time all over China, and I witnessed all these things, all the retreats, the war from Manchuria, northern China, from Beijing, all the way to Nanjing, to Shanghai, and then eventually he had to pack up and end up in Taiwan.
Yeah. So, Captain Ho, how about the other badges? How about the other badges that's on your blazer?
This badge is from China, from mainland China today. So I have a few badges. I have these two badges, the Kuomintang. I have the today's Communist China. I have the SIA, I have this thing. I have citations. I have my first flying tiger wing. So I'm very happy that I survived through all these tribulations in flying as in life.
Okay.
So I'm now to end of this thing. I'm the most proud now. My satisfaction is the book, and I want to thank Jonathan in helping me writing this book. For one stage of my life, I thought I couldn't make it. A few years ago, 3 years ago, I was hospitalized 2 or 3 times because of my health, and I had a big fall, and I thought I was not going to be walk again. All these things happened towards the end of my book. I was thinking I couldn't finish it, but Jonathan heard my story and kept it going and produced this book, and I'm very grateful to Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Captain Ho. Okay, do we still have time for one last question, Hui Chi? Yes, have. Okay, now, so since this is the last question, I think this is a very meaningful question. Can you talk about your last flight as a pilot, as a SQ pilot? Can you talk about your last flight as an SIA pilot? What plane did you fly? Where did you go?
Well, I was I flew the Boeing 737. I was the chief pilot in SIA at that time, and because of my age, I have to retire. It's very unfortunate because I was still pretty healthy at the age of 60. That's long ago, and yet I have to retire. So it was very sad for me to say goodbye to aviation. But then after that, I became a consultant to one oil company that kept me going and allowed me to travel and kept my life meaningful. So that is it. I'm coming to the end of my life, but I'm so glad to be able to share my life to all of you.
Okay, so with that, I think we've come to the end of the session. So let's thank Captain Ho for his stories.
Thank you.